You are looking live.
Here comes the play. Goodman at the free throw line. Jumper.
He broke his ankles. He is Houdini.
Mickey Mantle don't care about you, so why should you care about him? Nobody cares.
That's not a good call. No.
You don't like that call.
I don't like that call.
Woo, 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 woo. Not so fast.
Georgia and Iowa last week won in blowout fashion. Penn State did as well. But I was more impressed by Georgia and Iowa's wins because, Georgia, I mean, and you can argue whether or not you believe Arkansas was really a top 10 team last week or if they were overrated. That's a fair argument. But nevertheless, it was a top 10 team last week, Arkansas was, and Georgia made them look like they didn't even belong in Division I. Georgia's defense just absolutely destroyed Arkansas. Arkansas couldn't get much of anything going. They didn't even get on the board, so that just really tells you almost all you need to know. But the Georgia defensive line was just absolutely amazing in that game. And, I mean, Georgia, I think, has a chance, right, because Alabama's number one. And I think if you're looking at anybody who might have a chance at giving Alabama a run for their money, Georgia's the second best team in the country per the rankings, but I think that their play on the field really backs that up. We always hear all the time about how teams are overrated and they don't deserve that ranking. As I just said a few seconds ago, Arkansas was one of those teams that people were thinking, hey, maybe they're overrated. Georgia, not the case there. Georgia is if they can get their quarterback figured out, right? So they had I think Stetson Bennett was who started last week, and so Georgia won last week 37-0. For those of you that missed it, sorry, I got a little distracted. There's like a toy like bug in here, and I thought it was real for a second. Anyway, so Georgia won 37-0. For those of you that missed it, and their quarterback, only the Stetson Bennett, who started the year as the backup to JT Daniels, only threw, I think, only attempted 11 passes. Let me get up the stats real quick just so I'm sure, but as far as I know, he only really attempted 11 passes, and he only threw for 72 yards for the whole game. And I think Georgia, I know that Georgia's defense is what really wins them games. You always hear that cliche, defense wins championships. Well, defense won the game for them last week, for sure. And the running game was really so Stetson Bennett was 7 of 11 for 72 yards. And so, he didn't throw the ball too many times, obviously. But their running game, Georgia beats you with defense and then their running game. And, their lead rusher, I mean, they had a few rushers who had some decent yards. James Cook went for 87 yards. Zamir White, I'm probably mispronounced his name, 68 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I mean, just looking at the box score here, Georgia has a lot of running backs, that can gouge you. We had, the leading rusher had 87 yards. You might think that's not very impressive, but I mean, they have, the one is 48 yards, but if you count 48 yards, it's rounded up to 50. They got 4 running backs who ran for about 50 yards or more, and 3 touchdowns combined between those 4 running backs. So, I mean, Georgia drains the clock with the run game, and then they back it up with their defense as well. And they made Arkansas look like they didn't even belong in Division I. And it wasn't just Georgia's defense against I almost just butchered the name like we did on In the Zone with MUTV. It wasn't just the Georgia defense making Arkansas's offense look elementary. It was an all-around effort from Georgia last week. The special teams, there was a blocked punt. The punter from Arkansas was literally in his own end zone, and Georgia blocked it and got a touchdown. So, it's just Georgia really, really looked legit last week. And sure, they're 5-0, and you could look at any other games and say, well, okay, whatever. But that game last week was the one for me that I was really like, I took a step back and I said, whoa, they got something brewing in Georgia. If they can get JT Daniels back, Georgia might be a not a college football playoff contender, but a college football or a playoff championship contender. I think it's without a doubt that we're going to see 2 SEC teams in the playoff this year. And I obviously that's going to be Alabama and Georgia. I don't think any other SEC team really is going to be able to give either of those 2 teams a run for their money. But Georgia last week looked really impressive. I mean, they scored 21 points in the first quarter, and that's pretty much all they needed. They just coasted to a victory after that. But if you missed that game, I would definitely go look at the highlights. I mean, they had a packed crowd, which obviously helps, but Georgia came out last week, and that was one of the games, like I said a few minutes ago, really proved themselves and really showed that they are not to be they're not to be taken lightly. They're a serious team. And I mean, hey, they're the second best team in the country for a reason, and they came out and proved it last week. Iowa, on the other hand, entered last week ranked 5th as they took on Maryland on last Friday, and Maryland was off to a 4-0 start. There was some speculation, is this the year that Maryland gets a big win against a top 10, top 5 team, as they have struggled in doing so in the past 10 years. 2013 they started off 4-0, and Florida State took them to the woodshed 63-0. 2 years ago, I think they were either 3-1, and they had Penn State coming to town, and Penn State just, again, absolutely took them to the woodshed. So there was, a lot of I don't want to say rumors, but there was a lot of excitement in College Park saying that, oh, this could be the year, or this could be the game that really turns things around for Maryland, and Iowa just wasn't having any of that. Iowa came in and the first quarter looked like it was going to be close, and then the second quarter is when, I mean, you could look at it 2 ways. You could look at it as Maryland fell apart or Iowa took advantage, and I mean, it's a little bit of both. There was in the first 4 weeks here of the season, Taulia Tagovailoa, Tua's younger brother, which is the quarterback from Maryland, Taulia. There was a lot of I guess experts and media saying that, hey, Taulia is on the Heisman list. And I don't know where Heisman Taulia was last week, but he definitely wasn't on the field. He couldn't even finish the game, and he wound up throwing 5 interceptions. He looked very much so like his older brother with the Dolphins, throwing a lot of interceptions, not being able to make good decisions. And Iowa spurns Maryland for 31 points in the second quarter, and that, similar to the Georgia game, that was pretty much all they needed to coast to a victory. Iowa's defense forces, I think, 7 turnovers in total, 6 interceptions, 5 coming from Taulia Tagovailoa, 1 from the Maryland backup quarterback, and they also forced a fumble on a kickoff return. So, I mean, Iowa's defense has, over the years, Iowa has been known for their defense, and just like Georgia, they came out last week and just absolutely dominated in every facet of the game, but more so defense. Their quarterback throws for over 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, and I don't even think he played the whole game. I think that was just in. Let me double check here. Yeah, I mean, Iowa had. Well, I think that one might have been the punter or some kind of trick play. One guy had like 1 pass, but yeah, they brought in their backup quarterback, I think, in the fourth quarter. So, Spencer Petrus. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. Probably butchered it, but he only plays about 3 quarters. And he still, goes for 259 yards and 3 touchdowns. The key there is he had no interceptions and was able to keep his team in it. But as I said, the defense was absolutely remarkable for Iowa last week. And kind of a little preview for this week, Iowa's playing Penn State 4:00 p.m. on Fox on Saturday. And that's Iowa rose to number 3 in the rankings this week, and Penn State stayed steady at 4. So third-ranked Iowa taking on 4th-ranked Penn State. I believe that's in Iowa. Let me double-check here. I believe it's Let me scroll down. I'm like 90% sure it is in Iowa, and yes, it is. It's in Iowa City at Kinnick Stadium. And so Penn State, right? Let's kind of segue into Penn State a little bit, since they are going to be taking on Iowa. Penn State beat Indiana 24-0 last week, and Sean Clifford goes for 178 yards and 3 touchdowns. Penn State's defense, obviously, you can tell they had a good game. They shut out Indiana. They didn't let any points on the board, and that's great, right? Obviously, when you force a shutout, that's awesome. It doesn't take an expert to tell you that. However, Indiana has not exactly been the best team this year, right? I mean, as a top 4 team rather, I would kind of hope that you would take care of business against Indiana at night, at home, because if not, then that's kind of worrying. Like, oh, okay, is Penn State for real? You might start asking yourself those questions. Penn State played some really good defense against Indiana, but and the reason that Iowa jumped over Penn State is because Iowa scored 51 points, right? Their defense got the turnovers, and their offense took full advantage of it. Penn State, you get a shutout, you force, I don't know, how many punts and how many turnovers. See, check the box score real quick. Indiana's quarterback had, between the two of them, had 2 interceptions. And, see how many, I don't know how many punts they had, but for you to only rack up 24 points is kind of, I don't want to say disappointing, but I think that leaves a lot more to be desired. I think that leaves a lot on the plate for Penn State. So, for those of you that are like, I have no clue why Penn State got jumped by Iowa, it's because Iowa looked like a team that might be able to make it to the championship, and Penn State just looked like a team that, okay, fine, they took care of business against a team that they should have at home. They did what they were expected to do. I think for me to be more impressed by Penn State, I would have wanted to see Penn State's offense take full advantage of all the opportunities they had. They didn't score more than once a quarter, so I don't know. I think the offense still needs work. But I mean, take a look. And again, I really hate comparing this season, whether it's NFL, college football, whatever it is. I'm not a big fan of comparing this season to last season, because for those of you that lived under a rock, last year was the big COVID season, and I don't think any team really got into a good rhythm. But I mean, the stats don't lie, wins and losses don't lie. Penn State was awful last year, and sure, like I said, you take that with a grain of salt. They had a lot of guys opt out. Games were postponed or canceled due to COVID issues. I mean, again, it was a handful for everybody. So take that as you may. But for Penn State to come back this year after a tough year, regardless of the circumstances, you had a tough year last year. You come back and now you're a top 5 program. It's pretty remarkable. I think this game against Iowa this week is a make or break point, right? Of course, Ohio State's going to be a big one for Penn State, but if they can beat Iowa, I think that there's no doubt. If they beat Iowa this weekend, there's no doubt in my mind that they will beat Ohio State. Because you go and beat Iowa, and all of a sudden you've got that confidence, like, oh my God, we can do this. You beat a top 3 team, you're saying, okay, we can beat anybody now. Ohio State's been the big hurdle for Penn State over the years. There's no getting over that. But if Penn State can prove, I think Penn State obviously has talent. They just need to prove to themselves that they're capable of winning big games and being able to show up when it really matters. Sure, their best win to date, sure, they played Wisconsin, and Wisconsin was top 25 when they played them, but Wisconsin, I think, Wisconsin, I think, has only won 1 or 2 games this season. I think they're 2-4, 2-3. So Wisconsin was, let's just say, they were a little overrated at the time of the matchup. So I don't really consider that as one of their better wins. I think now you look at Wisconsin and you say, okay, Penn State should take care of them. Auburn, that's probably their best win right now. And I don't know. I think, that's great that you beat Auburn. that's a good thing to say, hey, we beat a top 25 team, but I really think that until you beat another top 10, top 25 or top 10 Big Ten opponent, I don't know that I really take Penn State super seriously. And of course, you could say the same thing for Iowa or Ohio State as well, right? But I think for Penn, because Iowa has come out and they have proven in multiple games that they can go out and get it done. Penn State is kind of iffy for me, and Ohio State is as well. So I think this is obviously, again, Captain Obvious here, huge game for both teams, but I think this is the bigger game for Penn State. If they can compete with Iowa, not, maybe not win, right? But if at halftime you say they're keeping it close with Iowa, I think that proves to not only themselves, but that proves to the fans Penn State can hang tough with these really good programs this year. Cincinnati as well. They take care of Notre Dame at South Bend, right? They went to Notre Dame, and there might have been more Cincinnati fans there than there were Notre Dame fans. So Cincinnati is a team I would look out for as well. And sure, Oregon loses last week, but I don't count them out just yet. And Ohio State still has a shot. Still has a long shot.